This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities.
That was the Prime Minister's message last night, but to Americans about the impact tariffs will have south of the border, because there will be an impact there as well. Earlier this morning, I spoke to Michigan Representative Haley Stevens about how tariffs could affect her state, specifically, of course, the auto industry, and what she wants Canadians to know today. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I want to get your reaction, I guess, to the news that Donald Trump is following through on this threat. 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, 10% on Canadian energy starting on Tuesday. How concerned are you about the impact of this?
Well, let me be clear to you and your viewers. I'm a congresswoman from Southeast Michigan. I call myself a manufacturing congresswoman. I came out of industry. I still spend lots of time with our manufacturers and working on industrial policy legislation, and take great pride I take great pride, frankly, in the relationship that exists between the United States and Canada. I, at one point in my career, was a younger woman working in the administration of Barack Obama on the U.S. Auto Rescue, which was an initiative that saved General Motors and Chrysler from liquidation and bankruptcy. We couldn't have done that without Canada. We couldn't have done it without Canada. And so I want your viewers to know that there are still American lawmakers and policymakers who, one, love you, two, value our economic and trade relationship, are glad that we got a renegotiated trade deal 5 years ago with USMCA. Yesterday, I was proudly wearing my Canadian mittens. And I'll just say, I truly have no idea what the President of the United States is doing right now. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why you would impose and levy a tariff, which is usually levered at an adversary at best, if not an enemy, our best ally.
We are also trying to figure it out, Congresswoman, obviously. And obviously, the Canadian government has decided to retaliate because they feel that that is our only choice. And many politicians on this side of the border are describing this now as economic warfare. What is the likelihood that industry inside Michigan starts to collapse, particularly the auto industry, by the end of the week, I understand, could be completely frozen?
I expect it to be, and I feel so bad for our American auto industry because they don't want to begin the first 2 weeks of this presidential administration on an adversarial note with a tempestuous president, a revenge-seeking president. But I'm going to tell you something. That first Friday of the month, which is coming, right? It's now the beginning of the week. That first Friday of the month will be very telling because that's jobs report day. And last time I checked, we've had 4 years of consistent job growth. We have not had 1 month of job loss. So you've got the first Friday of this month, the first Friday of the next month, and the following. And Michiganders, we don't deserve this. Our industry doesn't deserve this. I mean, I don't think people understand. I mean, I talk to Canadian tool and die makers. I work with, I know auto workers over there. We have people who live and work here who are from Canada. We have people who go to Canada all the time. They have second homes over there. I mean, we're thrilled we're finally getting that second bridge up and running and going. So this is really bad. Our governor's speaking out, our lieutenant governor. We don't need this type of economic warfare. I can't call down to Mar-a-Lago. I don't know the number. I'm in a different political party than this president. Frankly, he didn't campaign on this. I mean, he campaigned on increasing manufacturing, and this is going to do just the opposite. So, I know Trudeau came down, your head of government, he came down to Florida and met with the president. I talked on your show about that. I thought, maybe we're in good step, but now we're going off and doing this. It doesn't make sense. And frankly, Where are my Republican colleagues who have been down to Mar-a-Lago? And I don't, I want to be careful because, they're my colleagues, but for the love of God, they need to be on the show answering to this.
Yes,
they do.
They
need to be answering to Michiganders.
Yeah, and I have asked for some of them, and so hopefully that will happen at some point. What are your concerns about the Canada-U.S. relationship? Because, last night, a bunch of Canadians booed the American anthem at a hockey game. I talked to another mayor who says people are asking for American flags to be taken down at a border town. What do we do with that, given Canadians feel that they are under attack to some extent?
Well, I think we're going to have to repair. And it's a real loss. I don't think we need to be taking our best partners and turning them off to our country at all. We just really have these rich traditions. And, I do know some Americans who before the election quipped about spending more time in Canada if the election didn't go their way. I don't know, how serious they are in following up on that. But even still, I'm here in Michigan. We send, our kids to summer camp up in Canada. It's part of people's lives, let alone the auto industry. And so I'm going to have to be a part of the rebuilding and repair. I still have some very valued relationships from my time in the auto rescue. We couldn't have done that deal without the Canadians. We couldn't have made sure that General Motors and Chrysler were still around without the Canadians. I was right there at the celebratory dinners. I think I still have the T-shirt that the Canadian government gave me.
Okay.
So I love you all.
Congresswoman Stevens, thank you. We probably needed to hear that today, and we'll follow up with you, of course. Thank you so much.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
These are unprecedented moves and in theory mean the end of the free trade agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. They are also set to put massive economic barriers, trade barriers in place, especially, of course, on border towns in places like Windsor, Ontario. Joining me this morning is the Mayor of Windsor, Drew Dilkens. He's also the chair of the Border Mayors Alliance. Mayor, good morning to you.
Morning, Rosie.
So this is obviously not the outcome anyone was hoping for. What do you think is going to happen in Windsor on Tuesday when these tariffs start to hit?
Well, listen, I think the impacts are going to be swift and going to be dramatic. And I think that's why we formed the Border Mayors Alliance, because we knew communities just like ours are going to be hit first and we're going to be hit the hardest. And so my community, we're home to the busiest commercial border crossing between the United States and Canada. We're Canada's auto capital. Just across the river is the Motor City. And these supply chains that have been built up on both sides of the border are so tightly integrated that it's hard to believe that, our largest trading partner and our best friend as a country is acting this way towards us.
And how many people are reliant, Mayor, on cross-border trade or cross-border jobs? Like, how many people will be directly impacted by this, would you say?
Tens of thousands of people in my region, absolutely. And so we're not just the auto capital of Canada. Within 20 minutes, we have the second largest area in the world of greenhouses. And 85% of their product produced in those greenhouses are exported to the United States. In fact, you can hardly go to a grocery store or a Costco over there without seeing products made from Essex County. And so there are tens of thousands of jobs on the line. And then behind that, you have all the support jobs that the economy relies on. So the effect can be quite dramatic here.
Yeah, and from what I understand as well, because the auto sector works on a sort of 24-hour supply chain, it will be very immediate as well.
Yeah, and I think the OEMs have been preparing for this. They've been looking at how to make sure that they have enough parts to sustain production for at least a period of time. But you're right, this industry works on just-in-time delivery, and so the effects will be felt very quickly, much like they were with Freedom Convoy when the Ambassador Bridge was closed for a week. It took about an hour before Stellantis called and said, "What's happening at the border?" So I imagine the impact will be dramatic. It's going to be quick, and what I'm really worried about is trying to make sure that we preserve some of the investments that have started here, like Canada's first electric vehicle battery factory. And so we want to make sure that we, Rosie, brighter minds have to prevail here. None of this makes any sense to so many of us. We hope bright minds prevail, and I'm certainly going to fight for my community and make sure that we're doing all that we can to preserve the jobs and the investments that we have realized that have benefited and will benefit the United States as well.
What are you hearing from people, Mayor, whether it be phone calls or emails or texts? What are people saying to you about their fears and concerns?
Well, listen, it's the uncertainty that's led up to this was more concerning. Now that it seems real, people need to process this and understand what it's going to mean to them. And I think in the auto industry, that impact's going to be pretty quick.
Yeah.
We're going to need the supports down here to help people. And so people are concerned. There's no doubt about it. I cannot sugarcoat this. But the one thing I know about people in my community, Rosie, is never hold us down. And the more barriers you put in our way, the more determined we become to persevere. And that's what I know about Windsor, Essex. And people here are going to band together. It is going to be a Canada First approach, and we've got each other's backs down here.
What kind of support will you be looking for? Obviously, the government has announced counter tariffs, which also will have an impact on Canadians across the country. But you would imagine that there would also be some support for people who are going to be laid off. What would you need in your city?
Yeah, in the lead up to this, was kind of asked the same question. And I said, I think the types of supports that may be required may be analogous to the types of things we saw during COVID, just to help businesses get through, just to help families get through. And so I'm looking to the provincial government. I'm looking to the federal government to say, guys, we better get our act together. While you're dealing with the retaliatory tariffs, which are completely appropriate, let's make sure that we've got supports to help families get through this difficult period of time. There has to be an off-ramp here. At some point, there has to be an off-ramp where the president says, okay, if the issue really was about border security and illegal drugs, okay, what has Canada done to show that we take this seriously? Because we have a shared goal to resolve those issues. Neither country wants to see illegal drugs going back and forth, or guns, or having illegal migration. We don't want that to happen. And so, what is the off ramp? What are the off ramps? How do we get to those points in time sooner rather than later, and just keep the economies going here? Because we've been seeing so much success and so much progress in the last several years. It's just hard to imagine that we're at this point in time today.
Well, tell me, do you believe that those are the reasons why the president is taking this action, given that the Canadian government invested more than $1 billion in the border, that the amount of fentanyl that crosses from Canada to the United States is less than 1%? Do you really think that that's the motivation for these actions?
No. No, I mean, any sensible person looking at the southern border and illegal migration up from Mexico into the United States and comparing that and contrasting that against the illegal migration from Canada into the U.S., I mean, no one in their right mind would think that Canada is the source of the problem. But if that is the issue, let's figure out what the solutions are and work on those things together, because we have a shared goal to resolve those things.
What kinds of things can you do, and you and the other border mayors, what kinds of things can you do, will you be looking to support Canada in terms of taking a stand against the United States?
Listen, all about Canada First and the Border Mayors Alliance, from Surrey, British Columbia, all the way out to New Brunswick, with dozens of mayors in between. We are united. It's Canada First approach from our minds, but it's all about using our arms, reaching across that border into the United States to connect with the mayors on the other side of the border, whose communities are also at risk and have jeopardy here.
Yeah,
and amplifying their voices, having their voices be part of the chorus that gets to the decision maker at the top to say, why are we doing this? Because you think you're hurting Canada, you are hurting Canada, but guess what? You're hurting residents in the United States as well.
Are you angry, Mayor?
No, I'm not angry. I mean, I don't get stressed about the things I can't control. This is one of those things, but don't take my lack of anger or my lack of stress for the thought that we're sitting back just thinking this is okay. We are working behind the scenes, even as a city council. We're going to have a city council meeting. We're going to figure out different strategies for procurement. We're going to look at all of the options that we have in front of us to make a small difference. And I think if communities across this country are having those same discussions, ultimately it creates pain points on the other side of the border in a different way.
Okay, Mayor Dilkens, I wish we were talking under different circumstances, but do appreciate your perspective. We'll speak again, I'm sure.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you.